Joe C. Ferris presiding.
Okay, seated. All right, anything else, gentlemen?
The respondent restaurant.
Mr. Barr arrested?
I'm a relator.
You've been defended too long. Yes, Judge, we rest.
All right, anything else you want to add? Arguments?
Please, the court, Mr. Bauer. I had difficulty understanding, and still have difficulty understanding, why the council could not appropriate the money requested by Judge Morris. She is the elected and sitting judge of the Chicago City Court. In my opinion, the Carlson versus Scadola case, 220 Northeast 2nd, 532, sets out the law more eloquently than I could say it, Your Honor. I don't understand why the city courts in Lake County have had difficulty with the administration in the various cities. Hammond has had problems. There are reported decisions about Hammond. Gary had problems when Mayor Hatcher was the mayor and Fred Work was the judge, or Charles Braddock was the judge. There are reported decisions. I don't understand the reason for the conflict between the other branches of government and the judicial branch of government for these cities and towns in Lake County. It has always struck me that when you look at the non-enterprise expenditures of East Chicago and compare those expenditures to Hobart, Maryville, and Sherrville, that East Chicago for 2011 and 2012 is heads above what is being spent in the other three towns, or two towns and one city. I don't understand why, when the evidence is that the percentage of budget for East Chicago, Maryville, Sherrville, and Hobart attributable to the operation of the court, that East Chicago is less than these other communities, yet the council wants to curtail the judge's budget. It is not as if the city has no money. The city has money. And even with the 2013 budget that they passed as the one exhibit that Dr. Bernard prepared, you can see that even with the reduced budget for 2013, taking what the court's budget was for 2011 with all of Mr. Sender's add-ons, that we're still less percentage-wise than two of the other towns, and we compare favorably to the third town. The judge has testified that these people are necessary, in her opinion, as the elected judge for the operation of the court. The mayor's proposed salary budgets, which I have introduced into evidence, contain the slotted number of people actually employed by the court and at the salaries indicated in the mayor's proposed salary budgets for 2012 and 2013. So the mayor, in his proposed budget, does not believe that there are unnecessary personnel in the East Chicago City Court, or that the personnel actually employed at the court are being overpaid. The evidence that Judge Morris has introduced establishes a basis for this court to order the mandate, order the funds that she requests. The city had the money at the time the budget was passed in the fall of 2012. The city has the money now, and it is not a financial hardship for the city to do this. If indeed we're going to do a comparison across the line, comparing East Chicago, Hobart, Maryville, and Cherville, because all four communities have a similar population, I think the council ought to look at the difference, the economic difference between all four of those municipalities. The council ought to look at how each of the communities allocates its money for the operation of the communities. And if the council wants to say, this is the way the executive branch operates in each of the four cities, if this is the way the legislative branch operates in each of the four municipalities, and if this is the way the judicial branch operates in each of the four municipalities, and if all other things are equal, that is, does East Chicago have the economic engine by way of retail that Maryville, Hobart, and Cherville have? And then you can come to some conclusion about what is reasonable. But just to pick on the court and say the court's expenditures for on a per case basis are more than the other three municipalities doesn't make any sense when you don't do any comparison of the overall operation of those four municipalities. The case law, as I said, is clear. Under the law and the facts as have come into evidence here, Your Honor, we request that the court order the city of East Chicago to pay the additional $65,000 so that the court can continue to function for the rest of the calendar year 2013. Judge Morris explained to you why she does not believe it is appropriate to use the probation funds. Wasn't appropriate in the fall of 2012. It's not appropriate now because the city has the money. This is not a situation where the city cannot afford to operate the court. Thank you.
Judge, may it please the court. I think that where we need to begin, Your Honor, is what the nature of the suit is. This is a mandamus suit. She's entitled to her budget unless it's unwarranted and unreasonable. If it is excessive, she's not entitled to have it. Judge, that's the issue. It doesn't matter how much gaming money the city of East Chicago has in the coffers or has coming in. What matters is the reasonableness of the operation and expenditures of the East Chicago City Court. And that's all that I think the issue is and how this matter should be decided. First, you've already gotten testimony and documentation from the State Board of Accounts that clearly says that the money in the Adult Probation Fund can be used for probation services. Now, it didn't say probation expenses. It didn't say only limited to such and such. It says probation services. To do the services, you gotta have people. You can't run a probation officer with just copy machines and paper. So the judge did, from the beginning of this, had the option, had the way out to avoid this litigation and simply ask for the council to transfer, to allow a transfer or do an appropriation of money out of that so she could pay her probation fee. Now, she opted not and filed suit. It is true that at the time that she filed suit, the Common Council did not have the benefit of the detailed analysis that was subsequently done by accountant Carl Sender. But it was done because of the litigation. Judge, this is just stunning. The bottom line is she's doing half of the business at twice the cost. Now, the court was concerned about some accuracy of figures. It, in a sense, doesn't matter because the real comparison is the amount of the cases disposed of versus what the cost per case is. Judge, without even looking, without even considering the issue of the need of clerks in order to handle the funds, and the court's well aware of this. The court knows how that operates, that you've got a clerk literally in the office, in the court's office, that's handling the money. The court's very well aware of that, far more knowledgeable than what I am. Even without that, the cost per case in East Chicago is twice the biggest, the worst of the other three municipalities. Now, given that factor, Judge, here's the simple thing. I think there is absolutely no doubt that when the judge took over this court, the payroll was bloated. The payroll is bloated for the entire city, Your Honor. You've heard testimony of extensive reduction in the budgets over the last few years with an attempt to rectify and correct this abuse. You can't just do it overnight. But they're taking steps. If the judge's filings are lower than what these other municipalities are, reduce the staff. Now, many of us have been in the Maryville Town Court over the last few years. The people coming in there are not necessarily affluent. if anything, not that much different than what's going through East Chicago. That kind of argument, I don't think matters, Judge. I think we got to look at what the facts are, and that the cost per case is just really out of whack. Judge, let me pinpoint what happens when you end up inheriting a bloated payroll, a bloated budget, and you continue to operate with minor modifications. In Cinder's report, Exhibit B, and I think it's our exhibit, Defendant's Exhibit J, Exhibit K, which is page 16, talks about what the actual cost is to run the East Chicago court. And the court earlier asked about what the income was to the city by the court. For the year 2011, the total income of all the funds, the general fund, the adult probation, and the court program was $160,000. The bottom line is, given the total cost of running the court cost the city that year $644,440. Now, I'm not going to stand here and try to advance the argument that the court should break even, but it should be closer. When you went up twice, if not more, the cost for case disposed of, and it's costing the city $644,000 in order to have the court open. It is not logical to say that she should have her budget in full. That the reduction is not unreasonable. With the lower volume of business that she pointed out when she was on the witness stand, the staff should be lower. The staff should be lower. The records show about 17 personnel. And you've got exhibits that break down who they are, what they're being paid. Lonnie Randolph is law clerk, John Schmall is attorney. It's all in there. What is not shown on there is the whole number of clerks. If you add the clerks in, even if you take the conservative amount of what Maryville had as 6 and Hobart had as 6, it's in the records here, it just skyrockets. It's more than twice what the other communities are doing. It is relevant what's happening in Hobart, Maryville, and Sheriffville. If you don't have the business, you shouldn't have the staff. So, given the facts that have not really been challenged, it is unwarranted and unreasonable for the judge to have a full budget, and the reduction done by the Common Council in the fall of 2012 was reasonable, Judge.
Your Honor, I don't understand the council's argument about the operation of the East Chicago City Court, or its complaint about the amount of money expended by the East Chicago City Court. The relator's exhibit, Judge Morris's Exhibit 3, points out the percentage of the court budget bears to the entire budget of the city of East Chicago. And it points out that Judge Morris shared in the sacrifice when the city started reducing its budget in 2008 down to 2012. even at that point, the percentage of the overall budget attributable to the East Chicago City Court in 2012 was 1.6%, which was lower than the percentage of the budgets of the other three municipalities, the courts of those municipalities, to the overall budget of those municipalities. This is not a court-related problem. It is a problem with East Chicago City government that says we have a budget of $30 million compared to the budgets of the others at $16 million, $8.5 million, $8 million for 2012. But taking Mr. Bauer's argument even farther, if you look at our Exhibit 6, where we have asked Dr. Bernard to figure the percentage of the court budget according to Mr. Sender for the calendar year 2011. There's not a whole lot of difference between 2011 and 2012. But if you consider what Mr. Sender says was attributable to the court in 2011, that $1,225,353, taking into account the money he says that he found in the clerk's office that wasn't being reported to the judicial conference, and the amount of money for the clerks. If you take that amount of money and look at the budget for 2013, what they certified as a budget for 2013, $25,859,041. Again, the percentage of the judge's budget according to Mr. Sender to the lowest budget they've had, $25,859,041. Exhibit 6 is 4.74%, which is still lower than Maryville and comparable to Sherrville. Obviously, it's more than Hobart, but you can do the comparisons and the numbers any way you want. The question still is, as the elected judge of the third branch of government, Judge Morris has a right to set a budget as long as that budget is not extravagant, inflated, whatever term you want to use. She's explained to you how she believes that the people and the budget are necessary for the operation of the court. The city has the money. It had it back in 2012. It has it now. So I believe the mandamus should issue. The judge explained why she would not use the probation funds because she believes it's in violation of the way probation funds should be used, considering the fact that the city has money to operate the court as requested by her in her 2013 budget.
All right, gentlemen.
With the probation money, would you both agree that it's not a set amount coming in every year? I mean, it may fluctuate depending on the cases and they're filed and paid and people put on probation.
Yes. I mean, you know that it depends upon how many.
So if you slot let's say you slot an employee and pay him the salary out of probation, what if there's a shortfall in a year and then you have to let the employee go, or what do you do?
Well, you come back to the council and you look at the general.
Okay. In other words, I just want to be sure I'm correct, that if you have an employee, you have to slot that employee with the council, even if you're paying them partially out of probation or paying them on a probation?
Yes.
Okay, there still has to be a slot, and money has to be appropriated for that employee.
This is confusing, Judge, and we've seen it. You do the salary ordinance, you set all the amounts, but that's not what the budget is. The budget's got to address as to which funds are paid out there. So,
But don't you have to have enough money budgeted to cover the employees,
yes,
irrespective of the probation fund? And then you would pay the probation fund to the general fund, which would be deducted from that?
well, Judge, it's my understanding it's supposed to be done the other way.
Okay. I mean, the court doesn't cut a check to the employee
No.
No,
on a probation. It goes to the,
it goes to the controller, and the controller
right,
cuts
and
the
he
check.
cuts the checks.
But charges it against the adult probation fund.
Right, okay, I see. Well, it still has to be slotted, it still has to be appropriated in the amount of the salary.
And I believe you've got a 75,000. Yes.
Okay, in other words, if you're paying a probation officer $50,000, let's say 20 of his salary comes out of the user's fees, probation user's fees.
Yes.
There's still a $50,000 line item for that employee, and it's cut by the controller.
Well, there'd be a $50,000 line item in the salary ordinance.
Right, for that employee.
In the budget ordinance, though, Your Honor, the entire probation salary was
Is in-
taken out of the general fund.
Right, and then if you pay it to the general fund, anyway, the probation money you're paying that employee goes to the general fund, and then he's paid out of there.
Judge, I don't know. That's one of the bean counter's specialty.
Yes.
Well, I believe, I mean, it's not like the court doesn't cut a separate check out for that particular employee. They just they're going to get $50,000 to the general fund out of the probation. That's what they give them, and they pay wherever it's supposed to go out of there.
Yes, they're required to do so.
All right. Anything else?
We have a Form 1 for probation, and if there's a line item for salaries, it would be in that probation line item. If it was to be used, then the controller would remove it from that line item.
Right. He takes it out of the probation money,
Yes, sir.
if there's any there.
Yes.
Okay, that's what. Do you want to submit anything on this? No? No?
Not really, Judge, because quite frankly,
Okay.
you're more knowledgeable.
All right.
on
How
this.
much time do we have here? I mean, you know there was a time limit as to when the budget,
We have, I think,
October 11th.
we have...
October 11th, you need a decision by October 11th?
The last check will be issued on that day.
Okay. So that's it, October 11th, we need a decision by October 11th. Okay, all right. Well, got several other matters that are pretty, that I need to get, had several bench trials this month. And if we don't get it by October 11th, then what?
And we close the doors for a while until you decide.
You close the doors, or you have to budget, you have to work on the other budget, or you have no budget? Is that what we're telling me?
We have no budget. The budget, the monies that we have are in all of our court programs. The monies for salaries ends on this October date.
As a council, have they approved the budget and you haven't accepted that budget, or is there no budget at all?
Well, there's a budget that was passed in the fall of 2012 for 2013.
And that's the one where there's a shortfall of $65,000?
That's the one that's the shortfall of $65,000. council stands ready to adopt an appropriation out of the adult probation fund for payment of probation services. The judge is saying that that cannot be used for that.
The probation services would include 5 individuals, not bailiffs, not the rest of the staff.
Unless they're doing probation work.
Unless they're doing, we have one bailiff that works both. He runs the community services along with probation. He takes them out to clean up the streets of East Chicago.
And he works, and he does part of his duties are with probation.
Now, we've adopted him into the community service program. He's willing to come in early.
Is anybody paid on the probation staff, or probation fund?
No.
None of the probation officers are paid anything out of there?
No, not at this time.
See, Judge, that's the difficulty because there's $165,000 in that fund.
Okay.
But they can't use the probation fund to continually fund the probation staff because they're going to run out of money.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. We're trying to keep the court open the rest of the year.
As your Honor said, you're not getting,
I understand there's not a,
it's not like...
still, that's why they're slotted through the general fund.
Right.
But if you pay part of it through the user's fund. I mean, it's hard to slot an employee. You never know how many employees you can slot, or how much. Would I be correct in assuming that?
That's correct.
All right. Anything else?
That's all, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right.